Cancelled. The word glowed a venomous red on the self-service kiosk screen, pulsing rhythmically in the overbright terminal. Doctor. Elena Ramirez stared at it. Her mind, sluggish from a 36-hour shift that had included 2 emergency C-sections and a complex hepatectomy, refusing to process the information. She was standing in the middle of Chicago O'Hare International, the air thick with the smell of stale coffee and Cinnabon. Her heavy suitcase was digging into her calf, and the cardboard tube containing her medical research posters her entire future. It felt like was pressing uncomfortably against her hip. This trip wasn't just a vacation. It was her presentation at the World Surgical Congress in Rome. It was the fellowship. She tried the confirmation code again, her fingers fumbling on the screen. Cancelled. See, agent? A wave of acidic irritation washed over her, mixing with the bone-deep weariness. She didn't have time for this. She had precisely 4 hours to land, get to the hotel, and review her presentation notes one last time before her slot tomorrow morning. She shuffled into the long, winding queue, the bright, excited chatter of families heading for sunshine, grating on her raw nerves. Every laugh sounded like a personal affront. She checked her watch, her heart beginning to thud with a new, anxious rhythm. When she finally reached the desk, the agent, a woman with a practiced, tired smile, typed in her details. Elena leaned forward, resting her weight on the counter, the ache in her lower back from 12 hours of standing in the OR flaring up. The agent's smile faltered, replaced by a slight frown. I'm sorry. Dr. Ramirez. This ticket was already used. Yesterday. The floor seemed to drop out from under her. Elena's heart, which had been pounding a steady, exhausted rhythm, seemed to stop. What her voice came out as a croak. That's impossible. My flight is today. At 3 p.m. I have the confirmation right here. She fumbled for her phone, her hands starting to shake. The agent shook her head, her pity obvious and, in that moment, infuriating. Our system shows the party of 3 Marcus, Isabella, and Leo Ramirez checked in and flew out yesterday. On the 11th, this ticket, under your name, was voided at the same time. Voided. Not changed. Not mistaken. Voided. A word of such finality. It felt like a diagnosis, as if summoned by the thought. Her phone began to buzz, the vibration jarring against her chest. The screen lit up Mama. A cold, heavy stone settled in her stomach, sinking through her organs. She stepped away from the desk, stumbling slightly, her blood turning to ice. Her hand trembled as she answered. Mom. Elena. We're here. Rome is absolutely breathtaking. Her mother's voice, Isabella's, was painfully bright, laced with that sugary sweetness that, Elena now realized, always preceded a major act of manipulation. In the background, Elena could hear clinking glasses and a burst of laughter, Leo's unmistakable, booming laugh. The Colosseum is right outside our hotel window. Why didn't you meet us yesterday? Sweetie. We waited at the airport for an hour. The sounds of rolling suitcases and final boarding calls faded into a dull, terrifying roar. Yesterday, Elena repeated, her voice barely a whisper. She gripped the handle of her suitcase, her knuckles turning white. The only solid thing in a world that was suddenly tilting. What do you mean? Yesterday. The flight. Honey, the one we all took. Your brother made it just fine. He's already out trying to find the best gelato. He says the women here are goddesses. You told me the flight was today. Elena's voice was shaking, a tremor she hadn't felt since her first solo surgery. She was scrolling through her texts, her thumb frantic. I'm looking at the message right now. Mom, you wrote, flight is Oct 12th, 3 p.m. I have it right here. She could hear the lie forming, the slight pause as her mother recalibrated. Oh, Elena, don't be silly. You must have gotten confused. You've been working so hard. Poor thing. You're all mixed up. The patronizing tone was like a slap. It's just a simple mix-up. But it wasn't. The truth, cold and sharp as a scalpel, was cutting through her exhaustion, laying everything bare. This wasn't a mix-up. This was a removal. An amputation. Of course Leo made it, Elena said, her voice hardening, the shock crystallizing into a cold, dense fury. Leo is always the priority. The golden boy. This trip had been her one reprieve. Months of grueling 80-hour weeks. Of sleeping in call rooms. Of subsisting on vending machine dinners. All while pouring every spare cent she had into her parents' endless stream of emergencies. Her father, Marcus, had retired early with a bad back. An ailment that didn't seem to stop his golf game, leaving Elena to pick up the financial slack. Her brother, Leo, 26, and finding himself, was pursuing his art career in Paris. A dream funded entirely by her residency salary. She remembered Christmas. 3 years ago, she'd received a new set of medical textbooks. Leo had received a vintage synthesizer. Her parents had beamed as he played an out-of-tune melody, while her A+ transcript was glanced at and set aside. They had insisted on booking the flights for this trip. Let us handle it. Doctoressa. Her father had boomed over the phone, using the title he only employed when he wanted something. I have all those airline points saved up. You just focus on your important medical speech. We'll make it a family celebration. The celebration that was supposed to happen after her presentation. The presentation that was scheduled for tomorrow morning. In Rome. The presentation that was her one shot to impress Dr. Badadeau. Eris. The head of surgical oncology at Johns Hopkins. The fellowship. Her entire career path depended on this. This wasn't a mix-up. Mom, Elena said, her voice dropping to a low, dangerous level. The other travelers rushing past her, and full of joy, only highlighted her profound, sudden isolation. You knew my presentation was tomorrow. You knew this was my fellowship. You deliberately gave me the wrong date. The silence on the other end was deafening, more damning than any confession. Then, Isabella's voice, stripped of its false sugar, cold and hard. Now, Elena, don't be dramatic. Your father is very stressed about money, and you're upsetting him. It's just a speech. You can do another one. We're already here. There's nothing to be done. Don't be dramatic. It's just a speech. Elena's hand was shaking so violently she almost dropped the phone. She pressed the end call button, cutting off her mother's next platitude. Around here, people embraced, said their goodbyes, embarked on their journeys. She stood alone, a surgeon with no one to save, betrayed by the very people she had been trying to keep afloat. The irony was bitter, metallic. She had just transferred $5,000 to their account last week for resort fees and spending money. Her money. She looked down at the useless suitcase, at the poster tube that had clattered to the floor, the research that had cost her months of sleepless nights. Tears welled, hot and angry, but she forced them back with a violent blink. More than sadness, she felt a profound, clarifying rage. This wasn't about a missed trip. It was about years of manipulation, of being their personal bank, their safety net, their emotional punching bag. They hadn't just taken her money, they had taken her future. Standing there in the chaos of O'Hare, Elena Ramirez made a decisión. The family she had been sacrificing everything for didn't exist. This wasn't a family. It was a parasitic infection. And the bank of Elena, the endless supply line, was about to be closed. Permanently. The taxi ride back to her small, sterile apartment was a blur of rain-streaked city lights. The driver, sensing her black mood, left the radio off. There was only the rhythmic thwack-thwack of the windshield wipers. A metronome counting down the beats of her fury. The exhaustion that had weighed on her like a lead apron in the airport was gone, burned away by an adrenaline-fueled, Arctic rage. She didn't feel tired. She felt hollowed out, scoured clean. She let herself into her apartment, It smelled of nothing, of recycled air and the faint, antiseptic scent of the cleaning supplies she used. It was a place to sleep, not to live. She had been working so hard, for so long, telling herself that the sacrifice was temporary, that once her fellowship was secured, once Leo was settled, once her parents were comfortable, then her life could begin. She dropped her suitcase by the door. It thudded with a heavy finality. Her apartment, once a sanctuary of quiet, now felt like a prison cell she had built for herself. Every extra shift she'd taken, every skipped lunch, every moment of her life she had deferred, had been for them, for the family that was right now, at this very moment, drinking wine in Rome on her dime. Elena walked to her desk, her movements precise and automatic. She sat down, the worn fabric of her scrubs rough against her skin. She didn't bother changing. She opened her laptop, the screen illuminating her face in the dark room. Her hands were rock steady. This was a procedure, an accession. She logged into her bank. There it was, the joint savings account she'd set up 3 years ago. The one she'd named Family Support Fund. It was meant to be for emergencies, a burst pipe, a medical bill. But it had become their primary income. She clicked on the transaction history. The numbers scrolled past, a testament to her own blindness. San Meiyuan, 000 on the first of every month, wired to her parents' checking account, labeled mortgage help. Another $2, 000 on the 15th, labeled Leo's Paris fund. Then the extras, $1, 200 for Dad's new clubs. His back was clearly fine for golf. $800 for Mom's spa weekend. And the $5, 000 for this very trip, labeled Rome conference fees. She did a quick, horrifying calculation in her head. Her father had retired 3 years ago, 36 months, at a minimum of $5, 000 a month, not including the constant, wheedling extras. That was $180. Ling ling ling. She felt the air leave her lungs. No, that couldn't be right. She opened a spreadsheet, her fingers flying across the keys, pulling data, adding columns. It was worse. It was $214. 750. Money she had planned for a down payment on a condo. Money she could have used to pay down her mountain of medical school debt. Money she had earned in operating rooms while covered in other people's blood, sweat, and fear. She navigated to the transfer funds page. She entered the entire remaining balance of her personal checking account, every penny she had left, and moved it to a new, separate account under her name only. Then, she went to the joint family support fund. There was $6, 200 inches it, money she had just deposited. She initiated the transfer to her new, private account. Her thumb hovered over the confirm transfer button on her phone's banking app. And for one agonizing second, she paused. The rage faltered, pricked by a sudden, sharp sting of guilt. It was an old, conditioned reflex, instilled in her since childhood. You are the responsible one. Elena, you take care of us. Her mother's blood pressure medication. What if they couldn't afford it? What if her father's bad back really was painful, and this was his only relief? What if she was being dramatic? The word echoed in her head. Her mother's voice. Don't be dramatic. Elena. She squeezed her eyes shut, her hand trembling. Was she really going to cut them off over a plane ticket? The image of the red canceled sign flashed in her mind. The sound of Leo's laughter in the background of the call. It's just a speech. They hadn't just left her behind. They had sabotaged her career, her entire future, without a second thought. They hadn't seen it as a vital presentation. They'd seen it as an inconvenience that got in the way of their free vacation. The guilt evaporated, replaced by a cold, or hard certainty. She wasn't just protecting her money. She was protecting her life. She pressed her thumb to the screen. Transfer confirmed. She systematically went through every account, removing her parents' names from any joint access. She changed her passwords. She closed the shared credit card she'd given them for gas and groceries, which she now saw had been paying for designer clothes for Leo and expensive dinners for her father. With each click, she felt a chain link break. The weight on her chest didn't disappear, but it shifted, lightened. The air in her apartment felt clearer. Her phone buzzed on the desk. A notification from Instagram. She didn't need to open it to know who it was. Leo loved to flaunt his artist's life. She tapped the screen. There he was, grinning, holding a glass of Prosecco high. Her parents were on either side of him, arms linked, posing in front of the illuminated Colosseum. They all looked happy, relaxed, and utterly without a care in the world. Leo's caption read, "Living la dolce vita in Rome, with the fam soaking up the inspiration. Wish you were here. L. You really should have checked your dates better. Number Rome, number family vacation, number artist life, number blessed. You really should have checked your dates better." The condescension, the absolute, galling audacity of it, sent a final, scalding wave of fury through her. They weren't just betraying her, they were mocking her for it. Elena took a screenshot. She saved it to a new, encrypted folder on her desktop. A folder she labeled Evidence. The next 2 weeks were a strange, cold, calm. The barrage of texts and voicemails began exactly 24 hours after the accounts were drained. First came the confusion from her mother, Elena. "Sweetie, the card for the hotel was declined. Can you fix it? The concierge looked so embarrassed for us." Then, the indignation from her father, Elena. "I don't know what game you're playing, but your mother is very upset. This is humiliating. Fix this now." And finally, the vitriol from Leo. "You selfish bitch. You're really going to ruin our trip over a little mistake. Mom is crying. I hope you're happy." Elena read each message, her heart rate remaining perfectly steady. She didn't reply. She blocked their numbers. She went to work. She operated for 12 hours on a complex tumor removal. Her hands steady, her mind clear. The hospital was her sanctuary, a place where problems were logical, where anatomy followed rules. It was only when she returned to her empty apartment that the silence would press in, filled with their phantom voices. She had channeled her anger into action. She was done living in a temporary box. She had saved $80, 000, for a down payment before her family had begun siphoning it away. Now that the bleeding was stopped, she had $24, 000 left. It wasn't what she'd had, but it was hers. She found a small, beautiful condo in a converted brick building near the hospital. It had exposed brick, a fireplace, and a small balcony where she could grow herbs. It was a home. She spent her days off visiting the open house, measuring the walls in her mind, imagining her sofa here, her desk there. It was the first thing she had ever done just for herself. She applied for the mortgage, her credit score pristine, her income solid. She was pre-approved in an hour. The loan officer, a kind man named Mr. Henderson, was helping her finalize the paperwork. Then, he called. His voice was no longer cheerful. It was hesitant, professional. "Dr. Ramirez, I'm afraid we've hit a significant snag. Your final application was..." Well, it was rejected by underwriting. Elena gripped her phone. "Rejected. What? My credit score is 790. My debt to income is low, especially now." "That's just it," Mr. Henderson said, sounding genuinely perplexed. "Your file from last week was perfect, but the final hard pull... Dr. Ramirez, it shows you opened a home equity line of credit 6 months ago. A HELOC for $40. Ling ling ling. It's been fully drawn, and the first payment was just missed. Your debt ratio is suddenly through the roof." Elena couldn't breathe. "A HELOC. I don't own a home. How can I have a home equity line of credit? It seems to be leveraged against your parents' property in Naperville," he said. With you listed as a co-owner of the property and the primary signatory on the loan. Elena sank onto her sofa. I'm not a co-owner of that house. My name isn't on their deed. There was a heavy pause. Ma'am, according to this file, it is, and your signature is on the loan application. I'm looking at the scanned copy now. Her blood ran cold. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was Mr. Henderson, she said, her voice a strained whisper. Can you please email me that document immediately? Dr. Ramirez, if what you're saying is true, you need to file a police report. This is identity theft. She hung up, her body shaking with a new, terrifying kind of chill. It wasn't just rage anymore. It was fear. They hadn't just lied to her. They hadn't just stolen her money. They had stolen her name, her signature, her future. The email pinged. She opened the PDF. There it was, a loan application from 6 months prior. And there, at the bottom, was her signature. Except it wasn't. It was a clumsy, obvious forgery. A signature she had never made. On a document she had never seen. For a loan she had never wanted. Her phone rang again. This time, it was an unknown number. She let it go to voicemail. Un moment la terre. A text popped up. Elena, it's Aunt Sophia. Please pick up. It's an emergency. Aunt Sophia was her father's sister. A stern, no-nonsense woman who had always kept her brother Marcus at arm's length. Elena trusted her. She called back immediately. Elena, thank God. Sophia's voice was tight with worry. Your parents are back from Rome. They showed up at my house this morning. They were frantic. What did they want? Elena asked. Our voice flat. Money. Of course. Sophia scoffed. Marcus tried to feed me some story about you having a breakdown. About you cutting them off out of spite. They needed $5. 000 to cover the mortgage until Elena comes to her senses. I told them to get lost. Elena's eyes were still glued to the forged signature. That's not all. Is it? Aunt Sophia. No, Sophia said, her voice dropping. After they left, Elena, your mother left her handbag. I know I shouldn't have, but I was looking for a phone number to call her, and a stack of papers fell out. Elena waited. It was a bank statement. For a loan. A $40. 000 loan in your name. And there were disbursements. Transfers. Dozens of them. All to the same place. A website. What website? Elena asked, already knowing the answer. It was called https www. Google. Com divided by search Q equals royalflushbetting.com. Sophia said, her voice thick with disgust. Elena. What's going on? The pieces clicked into place, forming a picture so ugly, so monstrous. It made her physically ill. Leo wasn't in Paris. He had probably never been in Paris. The art classes, the rent for his studio. It was all a lie. He was at home, gambling, and her parents, her loving, respectable parents, had stolen her identity, falsified legal documents, and committed a federal crime to pay for his addiction. They're not just liars. Aunt Sophia, Elena said, her voice breaking, the full weight of the betrayal finally crushing her. They're criminals. And they used me to do it. The confrontation was set for Saturday at Aunt Sophia's house. Sophia had called them under the pretense of discussing a family solution. Elena spent Friday with a fraud attorney, who had confirmed her options. This is open and shut. Dr. Ramirez, the lawyer, a sharp woman named Miss Penis Klein, had said, we can have a warrant issued. It's a felony. Elena's hands had trembled. What if? What if I don't want to press charges? What if I just want it to stop? Then we draft a repayment and non-contact agreement. Miss said. Klein replied, her eyes softening slightly. But you hold all the cards. Don't forget that. Elena arrived first, placing a single, thin file folder on Sophia's dining room table. She was wearing her surgical scrubs, having come straight from a 12-hour shift. The scrubs felt like armor. When they arrived, they looked nothing like the carefree family in the Instagram photo. Her mother, Isabella, looked pale and anxious. Her father, Marcus, had a stormy, belligerent look on his face. And Leo just looked hollow. He hadn't met her eyes. Thank you for coming. Elena began, her voice steady. Clinical. Elena, this has gone far enough. Marcus boomed, immediately taking charge. You've made your little point. Now, you're going to turn the money back on. Your mother needs her medication. This childish tantrum is over. Elena didn't look at him. She looked at her mother. Mom, you left your purse at Aunt Sophia's. Isabella's hand flew to her new Allegreda. Expensive-looking handbag. Yes. Sophia called me. Elena slid the first document out of the folder. It was the bank statement from the gambling site. But you left this inside it, she said. Leo, who had been staring at the floor, snapped his head up. He saw the Royal Flush Betting logo and visibly shrank, collapsing into a chair. What is that? Marcus demanded. It's Leo's art career in Paris, Elena said, her voice dripping ice. Or should I say, his gambling addiction. Right here in Naperville. You lying little. Marcus started, lunging forward. Sight down. Marcus Sophia snapped, stepping in front of him. You knew Elena looked at her mother, who was now weeping silent, shaking tears. You knew he was gambling. He promised he would stop, Isabella whispered, her face crumbling. We just needed to get him clear, he promised. So you helped him. Elena's voice rose. You lied to me. You manipulated me. You took over $200,000 from me. For this, we are his parents, Isabella shrieked. We had to protect him. You have so much. Elena, so much. It was just money to you. It was my life, Elena said, her voice low and shaking. It was my house. It was my future. She then slid the second document across the table, the forged HELOC application. And apparently, it was also my identity. This, Isabella had not seen. She stared at the paper, at the obviously forged signature. She looked at Marcus, her eyes wide with a new, dawning horror. Marcus, she whispered. What is this? You said. You said she co-signed. You said it was just a formality. I did what had to be done, Marcus shouted, his face purple, to protect this family from his weakness and her selfishness. That, Elena said, her finger tapping the signature, is a federal crime. That is identity theft. And you used my name to steal $40, 000 to pay his debts. In that moment, something shifted. The united front of her family fractured. Leo was sobbing into his hands. Isabella was staring at her husband, as if he were a stranger. And Marcus looked trapped. You wouldn't, he sneered, trying to regain control. You wouldn't send your own father to prison. Elena met his gaze. The fear she'd felt in her apartment returned, a cold knot in her stomach. Could she actually make that call? See her father in handcuffs, the years of ingrained duty, of being the good daughter, warred with the raw, gaping wound of his betrayal. Her hand, resting on her phone, trembled. He saw the hesitation. He saw her weakness. You don't have the guts. He spat. She doesn't, Aunt Sophia said, stepping forward, her own phone in her hand. But her lawyer does. I just spoke with Ms. Klein. She is waiting for one text from me. Elena. To file the police report and notify the bank's fraud department. Your choice. Marcus. This was the narrow victory. The support she never knew she had. Marcus stared at his sister, his bravado crumbling. He saw no mercy in her eyes. And then, he played his final card. He clutched his chest, his eyes widening in theatrical panic. He gasped, staggering backward. My heart. He wheezed, slumping against the wall. Call 911. Isabella. Help me. Isabella, conditioned by decades of his drama, started to rise. Marcus, oh my God. Elena didn't move. She was a surgeon. She knew what a cardiac event looked like. This wasn't it. This was a performance. No, she said, her voice as sharp and final as a closing suture. No more. The performance is over. Her father's pained gasping hitched. He slowly opened one eye, seeing her unmoving, cold expression. Here's what's going to happen, Elena continued, picking up the third and final document from her folder. This is a legally binding repayment agreement, drafted by my lawyer. You will sign it. You will agree to repay every cent you stole, including the $40,000 from the fraudulent loan, which you will be responsible for. You will sell your house to pay for it. You will give me the keys to your second car, which I paid for, and you will never, ever contact me again. Not for money, not for a holiday, not for anything. Or what Marcus snarled, his heart attack miraculously forgotten. Or Aunt Sophia sends the text. Elena said, you go to jail. Leo goes to jail as an accessory. And Mom loses everything anyway. Sign it. The silence in the room was absolute. Defeated. My father snatched the pen from the table and signed his name. Isabella. Her tears dry. Signed after him. The weeks that followed were a painful, necessary amputation. True to the agreement. Their house was put on the market. They moved into a small, bleak rental apartment across town. Leo, with Sophia's help, checked into a rehab program and started working at a hardware store to begin his own repayments. Elena's mortgage for the condo was approved. The day she moved in, she sat on the hardwood floor, surrounded by boxes, and cried, not tears of sadness, but of a profound, aching relief. 3 months later, she stood on a balcony, a glass of wine in her hand. But it wasn't her condo balcony. It was a hotel in Rome. She had rebooked the trip, using the first repayment check from her parents. She had emailed her presentation to the surgical board, and while she'd missed the fellowship, her research had been published, earning her an offer at a prestigious hospital in Boston. Her phone buzzed. A text from Aunt Sophia. They made their first payment. Leo is 60 days clean. You did the right thing. Elena looked out over the ancient city, the lights twinkling against the twilight. She thought of the family she had lost, the one she had tried so desperately to save. But as the evening breeze cooled her face, she realized she hadn't lost anything. She had finally, after a lifetime of sacrifice, saved herself. What happened to Elena was a painful, gut-wrenching betrayal. A reminder that sometimes the people closest to us can be the ones who hurt us the most. But her story is also one of incredible strength. It's a story about finding the courage to draw a line, to choose yourself, and to reclaim your life, even when it feels impossible. If you've ever felt taken advantage of, or if you're struggling to find your own strength in a difficult situation, I hope this story reminds you that you are not alone, and you have the power to write your own ending. Thank you so much for watching. If this story resonated with you, please click the like button and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell for more stories of resilience and justice. And please, share your own thoughts in the comments below. Your voice and your story matter.